There it is. Okay.
Great. So this is the recording of the SIG scalability meeting, Thursday, February 2nd, 2017. I just stuck something in the SIG scale Slack room, which I should add to the notes. But this was some things that came up at the PM meeting, which Joe and I think both managed to attend. Did you manage to attend the second one as well, Joe? I don't recall. That was the one they moved to Monday morning early over the weekend. So yeah, anyway, so there were a few things that came up on that, and I was hoping that one of the etcd guys might be here. So there was some request for the SIG to take a look at these.
The pluggable storage backends one, I don't see how that's 1.6.
Yeah, they acknowledged during the meeting that that was improperly tagged, and I think that one's been fixed.
Okay, because I know what Justin wants to do. He wants to be able to support console and other things, and
yeah.
that capability already kind of exists, and there's even PRs against it, but it's not defined pluggable in Golang. It's
I think pluggable storage backend clearly just should not have been tagged with this group. I don't know why it was. I think that was fumble fingering at some point. But the other two were. I mean, the etcd. This has been kind of the home SIG for a bunch of the etcd discussion. So that one makes some sense. And the other one is the super obvious one is the performance and scale improvements. Which I think, did I see Clayton here? Is this Clayton's ticket?
It is.
Yeah, I'm here.
So we had also had some other docs opened up and in progress. Do we think do I recall, Clayton, that you even said during the meeting that this was kind of I'm not sure out of date is the right word, but it'd been open quite some time ago and probably needed at least merging with a bunch of the work that's been going on?
Yeah, I wanted to have a placeholder because at the time this was created, there actually was no placeholder for the overall scale goal. So, I mean, we originally, when this existed, we said we want something in the feature repo that says what our scale goal are so that people can tie the individual items in a particular release to it, and then it's visible like, hey, we said that we wanted to hit this goal. So that's the primary reason that this feature exists. If we want to replace it with something else, let's do it. But there was a desire to at least say like, hey, for 1.6, here's the additional scale goal targets we're going at.
All right. My feeling is we should have a 1.6, one open for 1.6, one open for 1.7, maybe another one, which is like a more roadmap-y kind of intentions over the long run, but that we should be kind of specific on a per release basis around this. So I say, okay, Joe's giving a thumbs up on that. So assuming there's no contention on that, I'll be happy to open one.
That seems totally reasonable. And like, as Merrick and I chatted before this release, in all honesty, to try and make this release have more metrics of goodness, we actually haven't laid down those metrics yet because we've both been sidelined with other issues.
Right.
So I think in the future, we're going to start to fill out a tree for or just a table that defines what are the metrics that we're measuring besides the standard 2, to define the scale goals for the future.
Right. Yeah, I think, so I see Joe's point there in chat about we should only be putting things in that we can measure. I think it's, to the degree at least that this kind of ticket informs the release notes and other things that users will come along and see, it's probably worth a little bit of explanation to make sure that people understand when they're reading it why it may be more limited than you would expect coming and taking a look at it. So I think part of the role of the ticket is to explain a little bit of that perspective. So I keep seeing Joe nodding. So I must be doing really well this morning. All right. And I don't know without some of our etcd crew here, I don't know if we'll make any progress on that, but maybe you have a different opinion, Tim.
Well, I don't know what the progress is. I mean, Wojtek and I have already enabled everything, and it's all running right now with etcd3, and Jiyoung has put the doc up for people to look at, and we need to, Cluster Ops has apparently looked at it, but I haven't talked with Rob about what his thoughts are on it.
I haven't actually gone and looked through this one recently, but when we were scanning through it during the meeting, there were some required checkboxes left unchecked. And I think part of the role of the meeting here was to encourage the people that were working on it to get through the checklist, that they needed to do that.
The feature checklist, you mean?
Yes.
All right, I can go back there and coordinate with Jiyoung and figure out what boxes need to be checked in Hangzhou.
Right. Yes, please. That would be great.
I apologize for not having a specific link to refer to here, but I feel like I saw something come across, maybe SIG testing or one of the notification things. A request for automated etcd2 to etcd3 upgrade testing. Do you have any idea if such a thing exists or is possible within the 1.6 timeframe?
They have, the upstream already has inside of their scriptory the ability to do the roll back and roll forwards and roll backwards. So the roll forwards is just the etcd migration, and the roll backwards is a monstrosity because that's not what the etcd folks wanted to support. I believe we have documented inside of his document that the recommended practice is to snapshot, attempt to migrate forwards. If you fail for any reason, use the snapshot and still stay in V2 mode. Is it automated? No, there's an explicit section in the document that specifies that you need to do like an outage window planning for this, because it's a, be careful, we're going to migrate all your data type thing.
Well,
Yeah,
Tim, automated and outage might not be in conflict with each other, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I guess I'm just pointing out
that, imagine no human fingers, but even in the no human fingers case, you might have an outage.
Yeah, that's totally possible. I'm just pointing out that upgrade testing was a real big pain point for the last release cycle, and folks are trying to get a little more preemptive about this. And so just moving from etcd2 to etcd3 sounds like an upgrade, so it might get caught up in this whirlwind.
They already have the scripts for it, so okay. At least on their side, right? The community is probably going to have community, which is like this broad ecosystem of everything in its brother, is probably going to have to take Jiyoung's document and turn it into some type of playbook, script, chef something, puppet something. Pick your favorite configuration management system. Right. And have to handle it downstream, but it's all documented in that main doc.
Okay, cool. Thanks. That was really informative for me. Like I said, I wish I had more concrete details, but I'll chase this down a little bit more next week. Just giving us a heads up, we might have some more noise on this.
Hey, Aaron. Do you? I'll say. Let me open by acknowledging that the checklists on the features have been. I've been sort of pounding the drum about, hey, if we have checklists, we should use them or get rid of them. But if we have them, we should use them. And I'm wondering if there's a upgrade testing, upgrade procedure checkbox somewhere that needs to be added to the standard list, or whether that's a overreaction.
It's possible. Let me see if I can dig up the link in the next hour here, because it's I got a lot to sift through. But I'll put it in the meeting notes and we can chat about this later, if that'll work. Because I'm kind of unclear whether we're using the new feature checkbox list or the old feature checkbox list, and if we should be suggesting a new thing for upgrade testing or whatever. So, because I think the etcd3 stuff was brought up in concert with a couple of other things related to upgrading. So I'll see what I can find.
Okay. All right. I know we've talked about it a few meetings, but I think we actually have more to review today, right? On the scalability,
Sizing
recommendations. Would you guys be up for taking a look at that?
Yeah, do you have that ready?
I'd say we made significant enough progress on it that we're ready for some additional input. Can you? What's the best way going to be the best way to share that? You want to join the meeting?
So I already have joined the meeting. I'll go ahead and paste it on here. If you need to be invited, let me know. Just send me in the invite request.
I think we're stumbling squarely across what's the right way to publish and collaborate on docs within the community issue here. But here, let me see if I can. I'll bet from this conference system. I'll bet from this conference system I can't get to it. But let's see.
Should be able to.
No. There we go. Can you handle this right now, and then I'll share it?
So, Tim, are you in there? In Scalability, I'm going to give you an invite right now.
Can I get to it now?
Request access one more time.
Apologies for those folks.
And you should be able to get in there now. Drive is a little slow today, apparently.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me try doing a screen share here, which should work. Once I put this way, sure. No, that's the wrong one. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so here, let me hand it off to you to navigate through this. At least maybe give people a walkthrough so they can take a look at it later. And
where's the mouse?
Or this mouse also works. There you go. It's a little easier to deal with.
Okay. So I'm not good at what do you call it? Presentations here, but let me go ahead and try. So here we have the intent here is to create a sheet of some sort that gives sizing recommendations to community as a whole based on whatever the community currently is using. So we want to actually collect data first, right? And so there seems to be two main sources of data we can collect from, which is cluster ops and the Kate's community internals or PR testing. So I'm not sure who to contact for this information. If you guys have a clue, that'd be great to kind of just point me in the right direction there. Cluster ops individuals, Aaron was able to find some information about cluster ops for whatever their current clusters are, including some information from February 16th, 2016, which I actually used to go ahead and create my template. So we have several questions. We need to answer first to get an idea of what is it we're finally trying to do based on what we know currently, and how we collect all this data and give something useful back to the community. So, and Bob has some comments here. If you could actually add to these comments, that'd be great. Let me see if I can go ahead and expand this screen a little bit so we can see that a little further. Sorry about this. All right, so what are the metrics that we're trying to evaluate against? Gathering that data, how do we go ahead and go to the community, tell them hey, can you give us some information? There's a question about what should be anonymous, what kind of information we should collect, what things we can collect, and then how do we reconcile that into some package. so that we can go ahead and run that against our own information, our own data, our own tests. This is something that Aaron put a decision tree for customer. Let's say they want to accomplish X. So different customers have different needs. We want to know we would like to have an idea, like based on their needs, what the recommendation should be for those needs and how to fulfill those needs.
You should try to be careful of popping it up and down. It makes it hard for people to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll try to go slow there.
One thing that I'd like to have a little bit of a discussion about, we were debating this in our offices, which is if we're going to go down the path of effectively collecting some survey data, do we think that using the GitHub issue system is a good way to do that? In other words, kind of follow the pattern like we have for the the feature repo, where there's a standard checklist of items, and the way you publish information is you open an issue and basically fill out a form. I mean, the other data collection items are all, at least that way it's explicit that you've provided your data. It's easy to make sure that everybody can see it. You would certainly be able to go and run some scraping on top of that if you wanted to. Aside from that, we're starting to look at things like shared Google Sheets or some database somewhere with various access and permission issues. But at least posting into GitHub would make it fairly straightforward.
Yeah. In some open and formal way, right? Some way that people can see, kind of follow through, etc. We would like it to be guided as well, right? So they can follow a specific format, if possible. So I propose that there's two things that we need to collect. One is like the global properties of a cluster, and the other one would be like node-specific properties of a cluster. The idea here is that we will get the topology of the cluster, and then we would run scalability tests against that cluster and see if it meets our SLOs. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Is there any questions or
No, this has always been what the end-to-end tests have been. They're kind of an amalgamation, and it'd just be a process order of what capabilities exist eventually in the end-to-end test. It'd just be like, this is a DAG flow for doing this type of evaluation of your cluster. Like step 0 would be, get the properties of the cluster, check conformance, right? That's the 0th order step. Then the next step would be do these set of performance benchmarks and compare them against what upstream numbers are given their profiles, right?
Right.
I was hoping we could do something useful but even more informal, which is just to start getting some information from folks about what size clusters they're running. What's the configuration and sizing of their clusters and how much load they run on it?
There's no reason you can't do that today with the current end-to-end testing infrastructure. It already exists actually inside of there. It's a hodgepodgery, but all of the capabilities for getting that information actually exists inside of the end-to-end test. The one thing that's ambiguous is wanting to get stuff outside of the cluster, like say etcd, right? You don't have easy way of getting that data. And I've bantered with other folks whether or not we want to build this into your configuration management tooling to basically say, get a playbook that basically says get cluster caps with gets the etcd servers as well as your actual cluster data.
So when you do the E2E tests collect cluster topology? The closest thing I can think of is all the environment variables that are specified. That's
right.
The E2 test can collect some of the information. It has access to all of the cluster data, and all the data is introspective enough. It can actually go to the nodes, and it actually does go to the nodes and gather information. So it can gather node-wise data. It's the question of whether or not the kubelet API exposes enough information for it to gather. And today it gathers some of it. It doesn't gather all of it, right? I have no idea how the kubelets or how the node has been configured from the end-to-end testing infrastructure from the Kubernetes API. But if I use a configuration management tool, I can get everything, right?
So I think there's a pretty definitely an early fork in the road here. So I was imagining that the best early step we could manage here would be to get humans to just provide some data that they know on a form by hand manually and post that into an issue.
Or in some cases, poke people.
Well, or
the direction we want to head, my proposal would be that we send somebody over to cluster ops and get cluster ops motivated to do another survey. The survey that I collected from February of last year is way out of date, and maybe it's time that we do sort of an annual, hey, who's running Kubernetes and what's your cluster look
And
like?
the cool thing is they have the email just so I can contact them.
That seems like the better group to get the right audience for that.
So that's fine, but let me finish my question, which is that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is more what Tim was suggesting, which is have some bits of stuff that you can run on the cluster that can gather the data and then publish it back in some form. I would say obviously with a human in the loop, but I think on a production cluster, someone's happy to run a little bit of code that says, hey, what's the cluster look like? We probably can't get them to run ETE tests because people are just not going to run an ETE test on a production cluster.
Yeah.
Some people might, but that's going to be a pretty high barrier to. Now, if what you were saying was there's enough bits in the ETE suite to gather a bunch of this data without actually running a bunch of tests up on the cluster while it's in use, then that's a different question.
Yes, there's enough capabilities in the end-to-end testing infrastructure for folks to grab topology information as well as some configuration data, but not all of it, right? Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to figure out if your Docker is specifying overlay versus, device mapper and stuff like that.
But how many nodes the system has, for example?
Yes, you can get all that data.
I guess my impression of what you're describing, Tim, is this is the part where the tests end up like SSHing to all the nodes, which really expects that you've been setting the cluster up with kube and have the right environment variables and stuff. Like if you end up standing up a cluster with some alternative tool, you're probably going to be stuck with the skeleton provider, which doesn't support SSH access to everything, right? Or like it's been a little bit since I've looked at this, but I'm assuming it requires SSH access, I guess is what I'm trying to drive to.
I'd have to double check the details inside of what's done in the end-to-end test, but I know that there's a whole section inside of the end-to-end testing infrastructure that basically actually goes to the node and actually grabs details behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's a shell script.
Yeah.
I think that the number of nodes in the cluster is only one thing of interest. I think the thing that we spend a lot more energy on, I know, is wondering how people have their control plane configured more so than the number of nodes. So,
right.
Do you know, Tim, off the top of your head, aside from like the etcd stuff, do you know how much of that is gathered?
That was going to be my question.
There's some information that exists. I don't know. You can gather that information right now today, or at least some of it, but some of it, unless it's outside the cluster, there's no way to get that information because not everybody deploys the same way, right? That's the biggest problem. There's like everybody and their brother has their own way of deploying. So because of that, there's no unifying principle for you to gather cluster state. Like that's where the configuration management tool comes into play. You'd have to like create a playbook that says, grab the data of what you've configured and, punch it all back together into some report. And I've explicitly asked for this on our side because I need that data from time to time.
What's the latest on Alejandro's stuff in terms of being able to collect config? Is that just stalled out?
So I'm not entirely sure if what we're talking about here is a little bit outside the scope of what I had proposed. We can definitely discuss that if you want.
Why don't you give him a quick update.
And as far as the update, more individuals involved, more people giving me questions about what the intent is. There seems to be some sort of disagreement about what the scope should be for this, because some people think that all components should be able to provide the /configs endpoint, and there are other individuals such as Daniel Lavalamp who suggest that no, that should not be the case. It only is some components should provide that. So more individuals asking questions, and then the same individuals from prior adding more questions on top of what they had previously done.
We definitely stepped into the middle of this
Yes,
project. Right into the middle.
Totally stalled out. We've had, strong opinions from Deds2K and bgrant and Lavalamp, and it's just kind of not going anywhere. So there are two prongs here, right? One, we had sort of a proof of concept PR for how you could maybe do this for kubelet. And then the second was the proposal for how we might want to do this. And yes, I do see a high degree of overlap for like a standard way of describing cluster topology, which sure be great. But we seem to have a lot of opinions, but nobody's really driving it forward. I think maybe one thing I would put back to this group is if we care about it, we should just drive it. That's sort of the message I've been getting from.
I think that's what Brian's been telling.
Stuff is like, if we care about this, we own it, we can push it forward if we want to, rather than trying to get people from API machinery and SIG node and whatever else, right? It's just a question of whether we think this is a priority for us. Fair?
I think that's totally fair. We can. I think with some of the work that's been going on around the governance side, maybe we can put the SIG in a position where we can push it ahead.
Yeah, I think we should work to get that over the hump.
Okay.
Perfect. This all is predicated, though, just to be clear, so everyone's on the same page. This is all predicated on, being introspective enough. Clusters being introspective enough so that they have all of the data present and available, because sometimes they're done out of band, right?
Well, I mean, at the very least, we can get the command line flags going to like the API server, right?
Yeah.
Which I think right now you can't even get that.
That alone would be useful.
I agree that there's probably some introspection we need to add, but I don't even, can we just see what the state of cluster data collection is today? Like, how much can we get and what are we missing? And then we can start to figure out where we need to add introspection.
As soon as we make this, we bring up this question, off people just jump all over it, right? It's like the first hurdle we have to cross. Like, what does the endpoint look like, and how is it protected, how is it secured, et cetera?
Well, the other option is that we can just make it be a convention that these components publish their config to something like a config map for a third-party resource or something.
Right. I think API
calling in
data, we can definitely collect it from there. Components themselves probably don't have a way to store this, or probably shouldn't. So that's kind of Brian's point of view, and I think Daniel's point of view, that components shouldn't have by themselves supply this kind of data. It should be API server who kind of just exposes all this.
Well, I still think, our mission here in the short run is to do the best we can with minimal impact, and that's not going to be everything.
Yep.
So
there's just conflicts about what that means.
It's definitely been interesting how much this topic has sort of irritated various nerves all around the project.
In an ideal world, you plunk down and run in a single container, and it gives you a report, and it has all the data, and maybe it runs a couple of benchmarks, and it can roll back up and report to you. That's right. The ideal world.
And I do want to say, I think one of the missing pieces here is that we just don't have, a uniform identity system for things that are not the API server, right? So we see this in terms of the way we're locking down communication from the API server to the node. You essentially need a new certificate route, right? We don't need to create a new certificate route for every component, because that's craziness. Sorry, it's my pitch for Spiffy again.
Hey, so is Spiffy like a real thing that Heptio is going to roll out for us here, Joe? Oh, what a convenient freeze.
And that smile there too.
Yeah, I know.
All right,
Hey,
guys.
well, he definitely walked into it though.
Oh,
Oh, that was a very conveniently timed freeze there, Joe.
Sorry. I'm still mobile, and now I'm up on the. I can see your building from here.
oh, cool. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, see? I was just telling everyone when we started how nice the weather is today. There you go. All
There we
right.
go. Okay.
We're about out of time on the meeting for today. Any other topics?
Anyway, just so you guys see, and I would definitely like people to kind of expound on this. This is a proposed template for like nodes. Sorry, cluster summary, not node summary, that's missing, and in cluster topology. We could definitely add columns and whatever. Just a way to organize the data and we just want to collect what we need to know in order to go ahead and reproduce this ourselves, and then see if that meets our SLOs. Anyway, that's the proposal for now.
All right. Anyone else? Tim, Clayton, anything else for today?
Nope.
All right. See everyone at the community meeting.
Happy Thursday.
I'll stop here. Meeting.